Week 1 of the NFL season is in the books, and while the Patriots started off with the win, some other teams in the division, some other common opponents weren't so lucky. I'm Alex Barth, he's Evan Lazar from Gillette Stadium, and before we look too far ahead to Week 2, let's take a look around Week 1 and just sort of recap.
Around the NFL.
Right, what we missed while everybody was focused on the Patriots. I want to start in the division.
Sure.
The Buffalo Bills, a playoff team last year, they trade their quarterback, they trade another quarterback, and then they get romped by a team that was in the playoffs last year in the Baltimore Ravens.
They weren't in the playoffs.
What's the Bills' plan, Evan? Because I couldn't tell it during the offseason. I thought maybe I'll see something Week 1 that will enlighten us, and so far, no such luck.
I think that we need to give up the Nathan Peterman thing. Like, what are we doing here? Nathan Peterman's PFF grade was a 24 out of 100 in that game.
I take it that's not good, the way you say that.
It's out of 100. All right? It's not good. What are we doing here in Buffalo, right? I think that this defense is ready
They're doing what Buffalo does.
But this
they got
defense
so
is
close
good.
and they shot themselves in the foot.
This is the thing. The defense is good. Tre'Davious White, they have some players on that defense that I think are actually legitimately good. That's what got them to the playoffs last year, that and Tyrod Taylor managing games. What are you waiting for with Josh Allen? I understand that he's a rookie quarterback, but Nathan Peterman is not an NFL quarterback. No. He's garbage. So what are you waiting for with Josh Allen at this point? The season's lost if you start Peterman for more than 4 or 5 games. It's probably lost if you start Peterman even for 4 or 5 games. So at this point in time, you got to go to Josh Allen in Buffalo.
Real quick, are the Ravens legit, or is that just more a product of the Bills being a subpar team?
I think the Ravens are a good team. I always have been a John Harbaugh guy. I think he's one of the few coaches in this league that can really hold a candle to Belichick and kind of, on both offense, defense, special teams, all 3 phases of the game, coach up as good as Belichick, but he's a top 5 coach in the league, I would say. So I've always been a Harbaugh guy. Their defense has a lot of good players on it too, and if you get the Joe Flacco, getting him back in the right direction, then I think that they have enough on offense with the new receiving core that they have there to kind of put up enough points with a really good defense.
Niners, Vikings, Jimmy Garoppolo makes his first, loses his first start as a starting quarterback in the NFL. His first since he lost to Towson back in college. So it's been quite a bit, but he did not look good. 3 interceptions for what is now the highest paid quarterback in football. It's a good Vikings defense, but you got to feel it's okay, trade Jimmy people. We still got Brady. There's got to be a little bit of vindication after a game like that.
I'm sure. I think this week a lot of vindication, a lot of moves. Malcolm Butler, Matt Patricia,
and we'll get to those.
Jimmy G.
Yeah, we'll get to
a lot of these guys are kind of coming back to the regressing to the mean. One thing I will say with Jimmy, he lost Marquise Goodwin, his top receiver, pretty early on in that game. If that's a serious injury, just looking long term for the 49ers, that's not good news. Getting picked off 3 times by this Vikings defense, it's one of the best defenses in the league. It's 1 or 2, Jacksonville and Minnesota. So I'm not going to hold it too much against Jimmy, but his interception rate is a little bit worrisome. I think a lot of the people in the offseason, a lot of the analytics gurus said it's not sustainable. His interception numbers will go down. Well, first week of the season, first game of the season, he throws 3 picks. It's not going down anytime soon.
You mentioned the lack of receivers, too. I think if you look at the 49ers depth chart, there may only be 1 quarterback in the league jealous of the group Tom Brady's throwing the ball to, and that could end up being Jimmy Garoppolo.
Or Nathan Peterman.
Want to go now to New York, the Jaguars and the Giants, Patriots opponent next week. But I want to talk about the Giants because we saw Nate Solder in the new uniform for the first time. Mixed results for him. Yeah,
Nate Solder had an up-and-down game. I didn't really think that he played anything other than what we've seen Nate Solder play like here in New England. I mean, he's obviously had his great games throughout his career, but on average, he's average. He's not all-pro. He's not Tyron Smith. He's not Jason Peters. He's not an elite left tackle, but just stabilizing that position, you could see how much of a difference it made for the Giants just to have a guy in there that wasn't a complete turnstile.
They played it close with the team in the Jaguars, who was a quarter away from the Super Bowl last year, and took some late magic for the Jags to take this one. We talked about it a lot kind of leading up to the season, a potential regression from the Jags. Did you see any sign of that here in Week 1?
I didn't see a lot of urgency, and Doug Marrone said that after the game as well, that they didn't play with enough urgency, and that's something that you look at for a team that's been reading their tea leaves a little bit too much, right? You hear from the outside of the building how great you are, Jalen Ramsey going and doing every interview under the sun, throwing quarterbacks under the bus, throwing Gronk under the bus. You start reading too much into that stuff, and then all of a sudden, it goes south on you a little bit. Don't have to feel like you don't have to try as hard almost in some of these games because you can just roll out of bed and play well. That's not the case in the NFL. The Patriots know that. The Jaguars are learning that the hard way, I think.
Down in Miami, Malcolm Butler gets beat for deep touchdown. Dion Lewis, an okay game. It took him, 5 hours to play it with the delays. So, again, dual interest for the Patriots. You have the team in the division in Miami, and then you have what is essentially now New England South Part 2. New England South Part 1 being Houston, but then you have Vrabel and Lewis and Logan Ryan and Malcolm Butler down in Tennessee. Your thoughts on Malcolm Butler's rough start?
It was rough, and I think that's kind of what we saw out of Malcolm here last year is for some reason overnight it felt like getting beat over the top became a problem for him. It wasn't a problem. He was a very sticky corner in 2016 and 2017, or parts of 2017. 2016 was the year I'm thinking of, but now all of a sudden getting beat over the top is a problem for him. It's something that he's going to have to iron out. I always thought that the Vrabel hire was a little bit interesting because the whole goal was to get Marcus Mariota on a track of, a better path than he's on right now. Obviously they have LaFleur down there who's a good OC. He's kind of that Doug Peterson ilk, a guy that's a little bit
quarterback whisperers.
Exactly.
Sort of
Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, those types of guys. But to have a head coach as a defensive-minded coach with a quarterback that you're trying to right the ship with, I thought that was always an interesting hire. So to see them kind of struggle in week 1 was interesting.
Are you surprised, given the opponents, just to get back to Butler real quick, are you surprised, given the opponents, Gilmore had that much an exponentially better game than Butler in week 1?
No, I thought he was exponentially better last year than Butler. Yeah. I really thought that Gilmore kind of solidified himself as the true number 1 here. I think most people would agree with that. Obviously, I'm not saying that they couldn't have used Butler in the Super Bowl. They obviously, if we're going to regurgitate that.
We're not.
Obviously, we know. But I think that overall, I think that we knew that Gilmore going into this season was a better cornerback than Malcolm.
All right, one last game, the Steelers and the Browns.
Oh, God.
We got to talk about it. The true opponent of the Patriots in the AFC. They tie a team that was winless last year. So Browns still winless, but it's no longer a losing streak. But we saw the Steelers without Le'Veon Bell. Big Ben struggled mightily. That defense had some trouble as well. We know they have some question marks there. Where's your level of concern if you're the Steelers at this point?
Well, I will say this. I think the Cleveland defense is for real.
Okay.
I really think that they have a lot of really good players on that defense. Denzel Ward had 2 picks in his very first NFL game. He looks like a player. Myles Garrett, I truly think, is a dark horse defensive player of the year candidate. They have a lot of good players on all 3 levels of that defense. I think the Steelers learned that the hard way on Sunday. And I think for the Pittsburgh Steelers, this thing is starting to unravel a little bit, I think, in Pittsburgh. You got guys in the locker room feuding with Le'Veon Bell. The offensive line's not too happy about his holdout. Antonio Brown's trying to keep it all together. Where's Big Ben? I don't know. He's not really saying anything. Where's Mike Tomlin? He's also not really saying anything. So
it's not like Mike Tomlin to shy away from a microphone either.
Right. So I think that overall, this could go south in Pittsburgh if they're not careful. I'm not there yet, obviously. It's only 1 game. But I think
it's the Browns.
They need to get Le'Veon Bell back in that building. It's one of those things where it's just whatever it takes. Get Le'Veon Bell back in the building. Whether it's a raise this year, they can pay him more than the franchise tag. That's something that people don't always know.
But he knows it. He doesn't know
so
it.
They can. The franchise tag is the average, right, of the top running back contracts in the league and whatnot. But they can pay him more than that. It's just that's what most teams. It's unprecedented to do that because why would you pay a guy more than they have to? But I think that if they paid Le'Veon Bell a few million bucks more just for this season, it might incentivize him enough. I mean, we saw what it did for Rob Gronkowski and Tom Brady here. Just giving them incentives-based packages kind of made them happy. I think it could make Le'Veon happy too.
There you have it. Our thoughts from around the NFL for Week 1. Are there any big talking points we missed? Put them in the comments down below, or let us know on Twitter at Patriots CLNS.
Fitzmagic.
Hey, he had a game. That was the one game I left off because he had Mike Gillisley fumbling a couple of times too.
Okay, but Fitzmagic.
Fitzmagic did a former first overall pick from Florida State get Wally pipped by a 36-year-old Harvard grad.
I will say this. It's possible that Jameis doesn't get that job back just based off of his offseason, right? I mean, I think it's teetering in that direction of, are the Bucs sure that Jameis Winston's their franchise? They've kind of been waiting for him to take that next step. I'm not saying Fitzpatrick is their franchise, but they've kind of been waiting for Jameis Winston to take that next step, to go from being good to great. He hasn't done it. Now he has all the off-field stuff going on with him too. If you're the Bucs, is that really the face of your franchise? I'm not so sure anymore.
There are all our thoughts from Week 1 of the... You good?
Yeah,
you good?
I'm good.
There's all of our thoughts from Week 1 of the NFL season. For more content, make sure you follow us on Twitter at Patriots CLNS. Check us out online at clnsmedia.com. For Evan Lazar, I'm Alex Barth from Gillette Stadium for CLNS.